Hi guys, I hope you're all well. It's been 5 weeks nearly since I was up here, so I thought I'd better get up here and do a video, and actually I was very much inspired to do so this evening. As you know, the way I work is very experiential, which means if I'm not inspired to talk about something, I won't talk about that thing. And this evening I had that spark of inspiration. Thought I would like to get up here and talk about this evening. So I hope you're all doing okay in these times of immense change and transformation. And I know some of those changes and transformations are challenging, but I hope you're doing okay. So I'm going to talk tonight about how relationships and connection can either inspire an awakening, an ascension process, or hijack an awakening and an ascension process. And as you know, I speak directly from thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of client contact hours, having worked in the metaphysical arena for just under 21 years now. But I also talk very much on this subject experientially, having also been through those processes myself and through the heart awakenings, heart opening, ascension process, through going through the experiences myself personally. So let's start with why it can inspire the awakening side of it. Let's go let's do the light side of it and the more polarized or inverted, let's say darker side of it, and then we'll meet somewhere in the middle, so to speak. So from the light perspective, if you're poodling along in your life and your life is okay, or maybe not okay, but either way it's not inspiring the stretching of your consciousness, the ignition of your inner fire or your inner flame, the ignition of the raising of your consciousness, the ignition of your spiritual energy, what can happen is life events, a near-death experience, or more commonly than those, the arrival of 1, 2, 3, 4 or more spiritual catalysts, big soul connections, big consciousness connections, spiritual connections, you know, all different connections in the mix that inspire the ignition or the raising of that consciousness. So the most common way for people to go through an awakening process is often part of that process is by connecting with another or others, multiple, that inspire this stretching of consciousness, this raising of consciousness, this awakening. This is extremely commonplace, and often people's existing circumstances don't bring it about. If their existing circumstances were bringing it about, it would never need to happen in the first place. Different people or different life changes or circumstances would need to come in. So the positive side of it stretches one's consciousness, it elevates one's consciousness, it starts one's into the elevation of the heart, ascension, which is the descension of all that is unconscious and let's say unconscious within the energy field into the heart, where the consciousness raises. So a descension into the ascension of the heart and the expansion of consciousness. That side of it is great. The portal of the heart, which is many thousands of times more powerful than the brain, so to speak, the mind, so to speak, the portal of the heart, because everybody has a heart portal. As that fires up, one's perception changes, one's reality ultimately changes. That's not the first thing, but one's perceptual awareness changes. Often one's life path changes. That's amazing. And for the purposes of this video, different things can bring that about, but I'm talking about when it's brought about by the arrival of a person or people that bring this about. That's an amazing thing, and it often inspires one to come from a largely programmed separation modality of consciousness to a neutral, 0 point more unified state of their consciousness and in a state of union. So that side of it is all absolutely brilliant and fantastic, and all these things can happen by one or more people or events coming into your life in a connection form or relationship form that stimulates that to fire up and to happen. And sometimes these people have an actual soul history with you in parallel dimensions or alternate realities. Sometimes they don't, but it's still very powerful because it's a spiritual like connection. And all this side of it is something that is a vast catalyst upon one's evolution and one's journey, which is amazing. So that side of it can actually start someone on a journey to ascension, or it can speed up their journey to awakening. Ascension being the raising of consciousness into a unified state of consciousness or 0 point field within the human vehicle. That can do all of these things and tick those boxes. The more the inverted side of it, which can also stimulate an awakening, a raising of consciousness, a stirring and awakening of one's spiritual energy, is if one goes through that experience with a connection or relationship that has been compromised, as in the person that you're connected to at that time has been compromised or hijacked by an entity, attachment, malevolent extraterrestrial, curses, all of the above, implants. These are things I was talking about many years ago on YouTube, about 7 or 8 years ago. You'll find them all back there in the Dark Side of Twin Flames videos like that. So if your connection or connections have been hijacked, let's say there's been interference and the connection has been compromised, then what starts as a beautiful light can literally kind of turn into something very, very dark. So the light can turn into a kind of darkness. It's been like contaminated, really. Sometimes those contaminants are temporary, but often they are not temporary, and they can hijack the whole connection or relationship with that person. Doesn't mean to say that away from that person one cannot go on. If they have not been compromised, the person, doesn't mean to say the person who hasn't been compromised cannot go on, but the one that has often gets hijacked and like a train knocked onto a different route. And sometimes they're knocked off the ascension process because of multiple other energy contaminants. It depends really what the contaminant is, because you know you can get some malevolent interference that is long term if the person doesn't know what's going on, or they've bought into it and signed up for it and said, yeah, I like it, I want to go along with it. And I've actually heard someone say that, yeah, but I like it. So it depends to the extent of what's happened there. But what can happen is if you're on the receiving end of that, if you're in a relationship with them, of course it can be devastating, because you've had or got a spiritual connection going there. If there's history, soul history there, as in past times or alternate realities, parallel dimensional realities, and the souls know each other, whether they're aspect of the what we would call old school soulmates, or whether it's same soul family, whether it's aspects of same soul in more than one human form or multiple human forms, what they call, the twin flame experience, whatever, it's still as catastrophic and devastating for someone to be on the receiving end of that when it goes catastrophically wrong, not because of the personalities so much of the people involved, although having said that, It goes wrong much more often, 95% of all cases, and I say this from working in that arena for many years. If the person that got influenced is a sociopath, psychopath, or narcissist, because they kind of sign up for it, they're easy to manipulate, those personalities, for those malevolent energies. So if it's got hijacked, like I say, it can be devastating for the person on the receiving end of that, because especially if there's soul history, like I say, in what you would call past lives or alternate realities, because it goes deep. I mean, I often say this to people, these are the sort of connections that reach the parts that other connections can't reach. So they are ripe for the plundering by these malevolent energies that hijack an ascension process like that, or an ascension template, a unified ascension template like that. Because if you think of it in the sense of prey and food, there is great fodder, there is a great amount of food to be had by hijacking that. And if you keep somebody in a perpetual state of heartache or heartbreak, even more food, because the food keeps on coming. It's like they create a puncture or a leak, and as it leaks out of the energy field, they keep on feeding. And this is why I blew the whistle on this many years ago, when I went through not only the amazing but the most devastating process there when it happened to me. I brought out videos called the URL program, Unrequited Love program, the cycle of suffering, how these things are interfered with and designed to keep people suffering. Soul shock, I bought a soul shock, how it elicits a soul shock throughout the energy field, how there is an attempt to derail someone's spiritual process by keeping them in a state of misery and suffering, so that these creatures can feed and keep feeding. So it's that side of it is very, very devastating for people. And yet I've worked with so many people over the years that have gone onward, upward and inward as a result of that, and become fully balanced, fully conscious, fully unified, and are on a fast track to ascension, and, you know, will ascend within their human bodies as a result of going through that process. It's a shame that everybody can't go through that process in its lovely pure form without having to be dancing that dance with psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists, or somebody that was none of those things, although that is the most common, I have to say. It can be with somebody that just got hijacked on multiple levels, through the family lineage, through the bloodline, stuff put on the actual family that came through, you know, all sorts of attacks, energy attacks, and, you know, the whole thing get taken down from that way. And I bought another video out at the time called Soul Viruses, because it is a contaminant, and the danger there is if one continues that dance in its contaminated form, one has to be really careful there. And, you know, I wouldn't advise it, because unless you're 100% in your power and balanced and sovereign, it is like a virus, and it can leak from one of you to the other, because especially if there's the connection has been going on for a while and there's been actual physical intimacy, as in sexual intimacy, it can get in a different way, and it's much harder, like it is with any virus, to shift that when it's got in. It takes a lot longer to recover from that. So for people in that dance with someone that they absolutely love, they've gone completely and utterly toxic, and the whole side of it has been taken over, that is not a dance one needs to be continuing, because they might have been dancing with Prince Charming to start with, but they're dancing with Dracula at the end of it if it's gone that way, literally, because it's very vampiric. It goes vampiric, so one's energy is drained, siphoned off, as long as they can keep it going. You know, I've seen people caught in those loops for years. I was in that loop for 3 years, which is how I learned about it. So Can it being in that form still inspire ascension and awakening? Absolutely. And all the work that I've done to help people came after that happened to me. So I came into the heart through some of that process, but came fully into it when I moved away from that toxic dance, which started as Prince Charming and turned to Dracula. And I helped the 2.4 million people as a result of that, and continued my ascension process and continued to go into the heart. So I'm going to summarize it because I don't want this video to go on too long. Relationships and connection with someone is an extremely commonplace now way of somebody raising their consciousness, waking up, changing their life path, changing their perception, well, and reception to source. But also it's an extremely common way for somebody's heart portal to fire up and open, their spiritual journey to begin, or if it had already begun, for it to be speeded up like a catalyst, and for one to then go on in the fullness of time to become all that they ever can be in human form, awake, aware, and ultimately creating their reality, fully conscious. Equally, if it has toxic interference, like I say, there are multiple videos in the early years of me being on YouTube that explain this in great detail. But if there's been toxic interference at some level, hijacked at some level, one can still awaken and one can go on and ascend through that. The person that has been toxically interfered with, that's a different ball game. Unless they are very strong in their spiritual energy and get an awful lot of help and support, that the prognosis there isn't so good. And a lot of them get lost along the way because it depends how complicated it is. Everybody is different. It depends if there's just minor interference or if it's major interference. I'm really talking from the perspective of major interference. Major interference, you could say to me, why would any malevolent forces, inverted forces, interfere with those connections? I've come to the conclusion over the years that they interfere on one level to get food, very vampirically, to get fed, like a predator that wants to get fed. But actually, I've come to the conclusion that they interfere in those particular connections because they've got the leverage to keep that misery going for ages. If you really, really love somebody because you've had existing soul history with them, other words, past lives, if you like, and you know them on a very deep level and you've awoken with them spiritually, they know that they can keep that misery and suffering going for years and get fed, because that goes so deep, and it takes a long time for someone to bounce back from something like that, especially if there's been interference. They've got so involved that there's been intimacy, and there's been a lot of sort of linking in, especially linking in from a man to a woman to the womb area, things like that. So speaking from experience, have I ever seen anyone that was completely had jumped hook, line and sinker into the dark side of it, signed up for it, and then have they then ascended from it? Well, not ascended. I don't know anyone that's ascended yet. Not on planet Earth at the moment. We're not there yet. I have to be honest, no, I've not seen any in my, I mean, I'm experiential, I talk from experience. Not one where one of them, usually a male, far more men than women, have turned into Count Dracula, changed from Prince Charming, and then come back again. Haven't seen it. Can it happen? Anything's possible. I've seen things that you wouldn't believe. I haven't personally seen that in my experience, and I have to say, you know, this channel is experiential, so I haven't seen any evidence of that. I've seen stacks of evidence of the person that was dancing with Prince Charming that stepped back when they became Count Dracula. I've seen them ascend, ascend, ascend and become spiritual warriors and very strong and go into the heart. And, you know, fast track through a process that there was an attempt at derailing and extensive, you know, interference with, but I've seen them to go onward, upward and inward. I mean, I could, you know, I could fill a book with the amount of people I've seen that. So I don't want this to be too long. Let's summarize. Whether it's an awakening that has not been hijacked, that's in its more pure form, which is lovely, and people go through the process. It's a very common way, extremely common way for people to be kick-started onto an ascension path or accelerated on it if they were ever on it, which is wonderful. But equally in its toxic, vampiric, nasty form, I've also seen, I mean, it's not a good route or easy route to go down. I'm not going to advocate it and say, oh yeah, it's a whoopie-doo route. I say that people are the bravest of the brave that have come through there. And, you know, I'm going to include myself in that because that was my entry point to ascension. And I wouldn't wish that entry point of ascension on anyone. But what I would say is that is also a way of awakening. You can still awaken through that and not just salvage things through that, but fast track and learn through that and grow through that. But it is extremely difficult, but you can do it. And I've seen plenty of evidence of people doing it. And in regards to the person that has become Count Dracula, like I say, I have to just speak from experience. I haven't seen any of those bounce back. I have to be honest. Just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean to say it's not possible, but if you ask me honestly, hand on heart, do I sense that when one has signed up and then literally given their soul away to the artificial inverted reality, I don't personally feel, I've never seen evidence of it, and I don't feel they bounce back from that. There are different levels of interference, and some interference is not as heavy duty as others, but for the point of this video, I'm talking about huge interference at fourth dimensional levels down. So, you know, at the time it happened to me, I knew it was levels higher than third dimensional, and I now know over the years it was fourth dimensional interference. It's catastrophic. It's interference that's been happening with that particular template. The template people call the twin flame template, or coming into a unified state of energy. It's so commonplace. I blew the whistle on it years ago, trying to save people from that misery and highlight it. Video after video, you just have to look back at my YouTube channel to see that, explaining what was happening and how this process works, to try and either help people avoid going through that bit of it so that they got the heads up early on and saw what was happening, or to help them recover from it so that they didn't lose years in their pain body trying to recover from that. So I don't want to go on any longer than this. So on that note, I am going to love you and leave you. I will be back on here as soon as I can. I'm not going to go into lots of details now, but there's a lot going on that I'm having to sort out. So I'm not up here as much as I would like to, but when I get those sudden sparks of inspiration and suddenly, oh, I really want to get up there, that's when I know, oh yeah, do it. I'm not one of these people I just don't have it in me. I'm not one of these people that will just regurgitate stuff, just come up here and say it for the sake of it, to get my face on camera or to get an audience. I'm not like that, and I'll never be like that. And I've said it all the way through this YouTube channel. If there comes a day when I just decide, you know what, it's not for me anymore, I don't want to do that anymore, you won't ever see me on camera again. It's got to be that I feel inspired to share it, or it feels right to share it. And if it doesn't, I don't jump up here, because I don't need the fame and the glory and the audience. It has to come from that authentic, truthful space. And the only reason I'm up here today is to hopefully bring a little bit of light, a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of awareness, and a signpost, really. Signpost to try and help you avoid the minefield a little bit, go around the edge of it rather than through the middle of it. On that note, I love you and leave you. Take care, look after yourselves, see you again soon, bye.